The GOAT debate. It's the endless discussion in basketball, isn't it?
It really is.
Championships, MVPs.
Yeah.
I mean, for so long, that's basically been the main measuring stick.
Yeah, the traditional stuff.
But some newer analysis is suggesting those old stats, they just kind of scratch the surface if you really want to understand a player's greatness.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, we're not just looking at, rings and trophies, important, sure, but
Right.
we're going to dig into some advanced statistics, explore different perspectives on what actually makes a player great.
And we've got some really fascinating sources lined up. There's this study. It uses advanced metrics comparing LeBron James and Michael Jordan.
Mm-hmm. That'll be interesting.
Then we're diving into some Reddit discussions, really engaging stuff about how subjective this whole geoid thing is and, like, how do we even define different NBA eras?
That's crucial, the eras thing.
Totally. Plus, we've got articles making strong cases for guys like Bill Russell.
Can't forget Russell.
Yeah. And Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. We'll also check out Reddit threads on Kobe Bryant's shifting place in this chat. Oscar Robertson apparently calling LeBron the GOAT way back.
What do we call?
And Wilt Chamberlain, his sometimes overlooked impact.
Right. So our mission here is, well, it's to get beyond just simple rankings. We want to understand why this GOAT debate is so compelling and, let's be honest, why it gets so heated sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
We want to appreciate the complexities, gauging greatness across different times, using different analytical tools. Okay, should we dive in?
Let's do it. Let's start with that study comparing LeBron and Jordan using advanced stats. It's amazing how much these data-driven methods have become part of the conversation now.
Yeah, it's a big shift. And what's really interesting about this study is its focus. It's trying to use data to highlight LeBron James's versatility.
It's okay.
It definitely respects Jordan's legendary status, obviously, but it really digs into LeBron's, comprehensive skill set, how he's played so many roles so effectively for so long.
And when you look at scoring efficiency, specifically, the study points out some maybe surprising details. LeBron's career field goal percentage, slightly better than Jordan's, and his three-point shooting also a bit higher.
Which really speaks to the modern game, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It underlines how vital the three-pointer is now and how LeBron really adapted his game.
Exactly. The game changes, players got to change too. Now, the study does note Jordan had a better free throw percentage.
Right.
But it emphasizes LeBron's really diverse scoring layups, dunks, the short game, and especially his low-post offense.
Okay, the low-post game. Tell me more.
Well, the study points out he's been remarkably effective down there, even against bigger defenders. So while Jordan's scoring gets all the praise, the data kind of suggests LeBron might have been a more efficient scorer over his career.
That efficiency plus longevity, that's a key point the study makes, right?
Yeah, a crucial distinction.
Okay, so the study paints LeBron as this sort of multifaceted offensive weapon. But it's not only about scoring, is it?
No, not at all. They also look at his playmaking, his rebounding, and his defensive contributions.
Right.
The specific numbers aren't right here in front of us, but the study makes it clear these are key parts of LeBron's overall impact.
Right.
It mentions his defensive flexibility, guarding pretty much 1 through 4, sometimes even small ball 5.
Wow, yeah. That shows his all-around game.
Totally.
And then there's just the sheer length of his career. The study specifically mentions LeBron's durability, his longevity, as a pretty significant factor in this comparison.
Which brings up that big question, how do you weigh a shorter, maybe more intense peak against a longer run of sustained elite excellence?
That's the million-dollar question in these debates, isn't it?
It really is. And the study gives us some tools, some advanced metrics to start thinking about that. We see those in the image provided. Can you break down what those stats tell us?
Sure. So first is player efficiency rating, or PER. Think of PER as like an all-in-one stat trying to capture a player's per-minute contribution. Jordan's career PER is incredible, 27.9. The text doesn't give LeBron's exact number, but it calls PER a key indicator, so we know he's right up there too.
Gotcha.
Then you've got win shares per 48 minutes and total win shares. That graph, it clearly shows LeBron way higher in total win share.
Okay, visually higher.
Yeah. And same thing with VORP, value over replacement player. LeBron's bar is noticeably higher there as well.
So in simple terms, what's the takeaway from those? PER is the per-minute snapshot.
Right.
Win shares tries to estimate basically how many actual wins a player added to their team over their career.
Makes sense.
And VORP, that estimates how much better a player is than just a, average replacement level guy you could plug in.
Okay.
So the fact that LeBron has racked up more total win shares and more VORP over his career, well, it suggests a greater overall statistical impact and value to his teams, at least by these measures.
It definitely adds like a whole new layer to the conversation beyond just counting rings.
Absolutely.
Now, switching gears a bit. One of the Reddit discussions we looked at, this is on RNBA Talk, it really hammers home how subjective this whole duet debate actually is.
Yes. That one was interesting. The user seemed really frustrated,
Mhm.
how the jute thing is often treated like it's some objective fact carved in stone.
Yeah, like there's one right answer.
When really they argue it just boils down to opinions. What different people value most when they think about greatness?
And they suggested this idea of tiers of legends, like
Yeah.
dynasty leaders, rivals, Mike and Russell, Wilt, Magic, Kareem, Bird, Jordan, Kobe, Shaq, Duncan, Steph, LeBron. Listing them out like that really shows you how hard it is to compare guys from totally different times.
It does. And thinking in tiers, it kind of helps appreciate that greatness looked different in different eras. The user also pleads for respecting the old timers, which is a great point. Every one of those players was incredible in their own context.
They also brought up something you hear a lot, the idea that, yeah, generally players do get more skilled, the competition gets tougher over time.
Right, the evolution of the game.
But then they point out our own biases, how it's hard sometimes to accept that maybe current players are exceedingly better in some ways.
That's a tough pill to swallow for some fans, for sure. It raises that question of how we factor in the game's constant development when we compare across decades.
Yeah.
And the user leaning towards the idea of greatest of their era instead of one single GOAT. That really resonates. It lets you appreciate excellence within its specific time.
And honestly, the feeling that the Jordan versus LeBron debate has just gotten a bit repetitive for some people. That kind of highlights the need to broaden the discussion.
Definitely feels that way sometimes. Which leads us nicely to the next Reddit discussion, this one from Arnabad discussion. It digs into how we actually define these different NBA eras.
Oh yeah, understanding this historical context feels absolutely key.
Totally. Knowing about rule changes, player types, styles of play in each period, it gives you so much more depth when looking at any player's achievements. The first breakdown offered is pretty detailed. Starts way back, pre-Russell era. Slower pace, more set shots, they say.
Right. Then the Russell era hits. And they point out, correctly, the jump in athleticism, the focus on defense, plus more black players entering and starring in the league. They call it the first golden age.
Imagine that shift. Then you get the Magic Bird era. Huge star power revival. The three-pointer starts becoming a real weapon. TV exposure explodes. A second golden age.
It's interesting, though, they then see the next stretch, 93 to 03, is kind of sliding downward. They mention injuries to big stars, expansion diluting talent maybe, a slower pace.
Even though the league's global reach was growing then, right? With Jordan International.
Exactly. So how did that slower pace, you think, specifically impact the game and how we might view players from then compared to the Magic Bird era?
Well, that's a great question. A slower pace usually means fewer possessions per game, so that can naturally lead to lower overall scoring numbers, even for really gifted scorers.
Right, fewer chances.
Yeah, and it might shift the focus more towards individual isolation plays versus maybe faster-paced team ball. The user did note this era focused more on individual stars.
Okay. And then comes the 04 to 13 era. LeBron, Kobe, Wade, Melo entering their primes. More stars changing teams, maybe more professionalism, and the rise of super teams.
They even suggest a third golden age started around 2010 within that period. But that's not the only way people slice up the eras, is it?
No, definitely not. Another user proposed a broader split. Just pre-modern and modern.
Simpler.
Yeah. Pre-modern covers the early days, Celtics-Wilt dominance, the ABA merger period, and modern starts basically with Magic Bird Jordan and runs through today's pace and space game.
That makes sense, too.
What's really thought-provoking, though, is a comment someone made about being careful with biological assumptions or racial dynamics in the early NBA.
Yeah, that was an important point.
They cautioned against simplistic explanations based on race, highlighting instead the cultural shifts, the slow breakdown of segregation that really opened the door for black players to dominate later on, as a crucial social layer.
It really does. Gives you a much deeper appreciation for the whole context. Okay, so let's shift now to some of the other giants often in the GOAT mix. Starting with Bill Russell, we've got insights from JSTOR Daily and Bet making his case.
And with Russell, the first thing that just hits you is the winning. 11 championships in 13 seasons.
It's staggering.
The Bet article nails it, winning like that so consistently. That's got to be the ultimate measure, right?
You'd think so. And the JS4 piece really dives into his defensive impact. It wasn't just blocking shots. He fundamentally changed how offenses attack the basket.
Changed the geometry of the game.
Totally. It even mentions a story from college where his coach told him not to jump on defense. Can you believe that?
That's wild. Telling the guy who basically invented modern shot blocking not to jump.
Shows how revolutionary he was. And both sources emphasize his leadership, his courage on civil rights issues, even when facing really ugly racism from the press.
Yeah, the BAT piece quotes Steph Curry, recognizing Russell's huge influence too.
And those racist descriptions mentioned in the JS Shore article, truly awful. But apparently it just fueled his drive to win, to build a legacy they couldn't tear down.
Incredible resolve. Okay, now let's talk Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah.
Oops Hype lays out a really, really strong case for him based on just overwhelming individual stats and that incredible longevity.
6 MVPs, that's the record, right? More than anyone.
Yep.
And the list of accolades just goes on and on. Most All-Star games, tons All-NBA teams, scoring titles, blocks titles. He's one of only 2 guys ever to lead the league in scoring, rebounding, and blocks in their careers.
That peak they mention, 7 years averaging like 30 points and 15 rebounds. That's just absurd.
Unreal. But then, like you said, the longevity. Playing at an elite level for 2 decades, winning a Finals MVP 14 years after his first one, that's unheard of.
14 years. That's incredible consistency.
And don't forget, 6 championships, the most career wins record, 1,074. And, oh yeah, he's still the NBA's all-time leading scorer.
38,387 points.
And he did it mostly with the skyhook, without relying heavily on drawing tons of fouls or shooting threes. Just pure, sustained skill over such a long time.
An amazing resume. Okay, let's dip back into Reddit, our NBA talk again. This discussion was about Kobe Bryant and how his perception and the J8 debate seems to have, well, shifted.
Yeah, that was a fascinating thread. It really captured how Kobe went from being constantly put next to Jordan, especially during his prime in the 2000s.
Right, everyone made that comparison.
To now, as one user put it, kind of getting shit on by some fans. It's a big swing.
You see posters remembering vividly those Jordan comps, pointing to Kobe's 2008 MVP, his 45% career shooting. But then there's the counter view that maybe outside Laker fandom or people who didn't like LeBron, Kobe wasn't really in that top tier J8 chat, often labeled a less efficient chucker.
Ouch. Yeah, and the advanced stats come up again. PER, win shares, VORP. Some argue Kobe didn't consistently lead the league in those, placing him maybe a notch below Jordan or LeBron statistically.
But it's interesting, defenders of Kobe bring up context again, the slower pace of his era.
Mm-hmm.
The triangle offense may be suppressing some raw numbers compared to other systems.
Right, the context argument.
And there's definitely a feeling among some that he's maybe unfairly disrespected now, considering his 5 rings and his undeniable impact on winning.
Yeah, it feels like his legacy is still very much being debated, still settling. Okay, another Reddit thread, RNBA talk again. This one looked back at Oscar Robertson saying, way back in 2010, that LeBron James was already in the GO conversation.
Before any rings, that was a bold call then.
Super bold. Robertson clearly saw something special, didn't he? The arguments supporting it back then were LeBron coming straight from high school, dominating immediately, all-star every year, multiple MVPs by age 25. His talent was just off the charts obvious.
But the doubters had points too, right? The Eastern Conference was seen as weaker then.
Mm-hmm. The Eastern Conference jokes.
Yeah. Plus, LeBron had lost in the finals, and then came the decision and the Miami Heat super team.
Right. The super team formation definitely rubbed some people the wrong way and became part of the narrative against him.
Which raises that interesting side point from the thread. The idea that some criticism towards LeBron might have had non-basketball motivations, whether it's backlash to his confidence, racial bias, later his political stances.
Yeah, that definitely gets brought up as a factor in how he's perceived by some. And the super team critique itself gets debated in the thread. Some argue, hey, it lets great players actually team up and compete at the highest level. And besides, plenty of super teams have actually underperformed expectations.
Good point. Remember the Nash-Kobe Dwight Lakers?
Exactly. So the overall vibe in that 2010 discussion recap seemed to be,
yeah, even back then, LeBron's raw talent and impact were so immense that many people did already see him as being in that G8 conversation, championships or not at that point. His trajectory seemed undeniable. Okay, finally, let's talk about Wilt Chamberlain. A guy whose statistical dominance is almost mythical, but who sometimes gets a bit overlooked in modern Joe chats. We've got an Arnbed discussion thread and an EBS Go entry on him.
Right, Will. The numbers are just staggering. The Reddit thread acknowledges that, but also brings up the common criticisms, like losing that Game 7 in 62 despite scoring a ton.
Yeah, and the argument that his crazy scoring numbers were maybe inflated because his teams played fast and maybe didn't defend as well, leading to more possessions for him to score.
But the defense for Wilt is strong, too. His Warriors teams often lacked depth, had guys injured or fouling out. Meanwhile, he's going up against those stacked Celtics teams with Red Auerbach coaching. Context again.
It always comes back to context, doesn't it? Individual brilliance versus team construction. The discussion also touches on his later move to the Lakers and the struggles of fitting those aging stars together.
Yeah. And it mentions the whole debate about pace-adjusting stats from older eras. It's tricky because the data isn't perfect, but the general idea holds. Faster pace back then meant more possessions, which naturally leads to higher counting stats like points and rebounds.
But even with adjustments, Wilt's achievements are insane. The 100-point game,
Legendary.
career averages that look like typos, multiple MVPs, 2 rings eventually.
And the EBSO entry really drives home his physical impact. His height, his athleticism,
Wow.
He completely revolutionized the center position. And importantly, it mentions the racial challenges he faced too, being a dominant black superstar in a mostly white league back then.
Another crucial layer to his story.
Absolutely. So as we kind of wrap this up, this whole deep dive into the Joe 8 debate, man, it's clear there's just no simple answer, is there?
Not at all. It's this incredibly complex stew, stats, context, era, team success, and just what you personally think greatness even means.
Exactly. Our sources showed us advanced stats offer one really valuable lens, while rings and MVPs offer another.
Yeah.
And you absolutely have to factor in the different eras, how the game itself changed.
And those Reddit discussions really highlighted the passion, right? How many different strongly held viewpoints there are. People care about this stuff.
You really do. So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. With basketball always evolving, new incredible talents always emerging, will our definition of the GOAT just keep shifting?
That's a great question.
And maybe, just maybe, is it more valuable in the end to just appreciate the unique, unbelievable contributions of each of these legends rather than getting bogged down trying to crown just one definitive UO?
It's something to think about. We encourage you, reflect on what criteria matter most to you when you think about basketball greatness.